Welcome back to the course on effective leadership. Now that we have seen how communication for leaders and for the corporate level are structured, let's cover my diagram of communication. This is a framework that I set up drawing directly from Shannon and Weaver's communication model from 1953 and also from Deetz theory. With this diagram, you will have a much more clear model when you craft your messages and to interact with your direct reports. Hit thumbs up if you want more content related to leadership. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel too. Hello there everyone! In the previous lesson, we stumbled across some communication theories. Don't you remember? We mentioned that the theory of organizations as bureaucratic systems, then the organizational control theory, and managerialism, then closing with leadership communication theory that spiral with the three areas of a leader. Now, let's talk a little bit about Shannon and Weaver's theory. In this model, the communication process is divided into parts. We have the source or sender, who creates or produces the message, chooses the medium and sends it. The person chooses the transmitter, which is the means. Thus, from the sender to the transmitter, there is an encoding process. That is, the person has to encode the message to the accepted format by the chosen tool. The channel is the means used to send the message to the receiver, which decodes the message. And finally, we have the recipient, who is the person who should receive the message. That person can provide feedback or response. We also have the noise, which are the distortions that affect the message received by the recipients. Thus, when thinking about the effective communication for leaders and its structure, it is crucial to reflect on all these points. Finally, we have got to where I wanted to go, my diagram of communication. In this diagram, I simplify the visualization by looking at four perspectives: you, person, message, and context. You are the emitter. To communicate effectively, you have to take into account what you feel, what you think, and how you are affected. But before you speak, even if unconsciously, you will analyze the context, the place, the moment, and the relationship between you. All of this imposes barriers. Surely, you wanting to convey the same idea might speak differently to a team member in a cafe and to your boss in his or her office. We are already noticing how political influences work. Next, you create the message bearing these things in mind. Take note that you cannot translate perfectly what you're thinking and feeling. There are limitations to this process. We speak here of linguistic knowledge, public speaking skills, confidence, restrictions that you may impose on yourself regarding what you will or will not say, these kinds of things. Here we are seeing the noise happening, how the person receives the message. Finally, we have the person who is the recipient. He or she has their own feelings, how they communicate and how they feel. Notice that you don't have access to any of this. It is hidden. What do you have access to? What that person externalizes, that is the feedback, their body, facial expressions, and of course what they say. Now, from the moment that the person is giving feedback, providing feedback, what happens? They become the senders and the whole process is flipped. They will feel something, transmit something else, probably restrained in some way or shaped by the context, and you will interpret it without being sure what's going on the person's head. This is the communication process. Two or more people talking without having access to the other's true intentions, just capturing the encoded signals, decoding them, and most likely without considering the noise. This is where many communication problems reside. Lack of transparency. How to improve your communication as a leader. This is why communicating accurately is very difficult. Seriously, it even happens to me, and I tend to take into account the possibility of the noise. And I deal with a lot of people, many suppliers, customers, and co-workers. Still, all of the time these noises happen. So there are some tricks that you can do and practice to improve your communication. Here's a quick example. When it's a relatively complex message, I ask the person to repeat it. I usually say, look, there are several steps in this task and it's very important that they are followed, and I'm not confident in my ability to have explained it all. So it may have been confusing or even I forget something. Can you repeat for me just to check if everything is there or if there's anything missing? This way you will assume beforehand a possible mistake of yours and can check if the message was indeed received correctly. When I know that I might have difficulty delegating a task, maybe because I didn't have time to prepare myself or because I'm in the middle of the situation, I already tell the person up front this insecurity of mine. For example, sometimes I have a difficult feedback to give, which I know can hurt the person. I may say, look, I don't know exactly how to say this, but I need to speak now. My intention is not to sound rude, but I know it may happen because I didn't have much time to prepare. So if something sounds too rude, please let me know. Do you see what just happened here? Obviously, you can notice nonverbal responses from the other person, not only in the example I gave, but in any other situation. Instead of assuming the worst of the person, you can simply say, look, I'm noticing that you are a little uncomfortable with the situation, and it's alright. I'm assuming that you didn't like what I said. Can you tell me what bothers you in what we've talked about now? We may discuss this topic later too. See? Notice what was done in these simple examples. I didn't infer anything. I already admitted that the error may be in my communication. And I asked the person to tell me if any of my messages rubbed them in the wrong way, because it was not my intention. This is a simple step for you to learn how to improve your communication. Effective communication for leaders on a daily basis. But we know that in the leader's daily life, we often have to say things that are not exactly easy and pleasant, but necessary. The only bad thing, and when a breach in trust happens, is when the other person assumes that we are doing it out of malice or negligence. Here's what happens. Everyone needs care and attention, and it is our duty to give this to people if we want to cultivate better relationships. In my course, my first leadership role, I go through 7 situations with clear examples that are difficult to deal with in the middle of our day-to-day lives and how to improve your communication. The idea of today's lesson was to go over the diagram of communication with you and get you to understand about the biggest problems that happen with communication between people. How about that? Better than that? Just wise that. To recap what we saw in this lesson, we got to know the most basic communication model by Shannon and Weaver with its 5 components plus the noise. Then we finished the lesson with my diagram of communication, which groups the theory of managerialism with the Shannon and Weaver model. We have you, the person, the context, and the message here. The most important point, perhaps, is that we realize that just as we don't have access to what our recipient is thinking, they also don't have access to what we are truly thinking and feeling. That's why transparency is so crucial. We talked about this at the beginning of the lesson. In the next lesson, how to delegate tasks, it will be the moment to learn how to go through tasks in a very basic and intuitive model. And of course, try to get ahead and prevent most basic mistakes that happen in this process of delegating activities. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel to follow the lessons, like this content if you think it has helped you, and share it with your colleagues and coworkers. Always look both ways. See you in the future.